I had a prepared medical freedom speech that I did the day before to do the same thing on January 6th, east side of the Capitol building, and I had a permit. We were told that we couldn't speak. If you have a large crowd, it seems to me you ought to let people speak so there's a positive energy source for the crowd to pay attention to. On the Capitol, basically ready to give a speech. So I said, well, I'm speaking. And so I scampered up to the top of the steps and I started speaking, but I have 0 microphones or anything. And of course, within a minute or two, I stop because no one can hear me. There's a lot of people and I'm standing at the top of the Capitol steps. People are pouring in by the second because Trump had finished speaking and everyone was walking over. I'm just standing there smushed against the wall. And all of a sudden, the doors opened from the inside. I was swept into the building, all on video. I can't imagine what they would say about me if there was no video. I kind of tumble and I almost fall into the building. There's a surge behind me. Now, when conservatives landed in the Capitol, standing there, everywhere I was very peaceful. I find myself in the rotunda. You can see me walking peacefully in between the ropes, looking around, and I've got my speech in my hand. And I think to myself, it is a fine idea that I should give my speech. And there's a lot of people here. But that was my mission. And a little bit later, I give my speech again. And then an officer taps me on my shoulder and says I have to move along. Then I exit the building. That was my sojourn into the Capitol on January 6th. No violence, literally grandmas singing Kumbaya, like the energy of a sporting event or a concert. And we leave, got dinner.
Did you think anything of it after that?
I didn't. And I was in DC another day, had no idea what was being said about the day. As an eyewitness, I meet friends that night for dinner, and the friends are very, very, very alarmed. When I said we were at the Capitol, oh my God, it was an insurrection. It was an insurrection. And I start laughing, like, what are you talking about? No, I was there. Like, no, what are you talking about? And they were very, very worried for me. And I'm sitting at dinner and I get a message on my phone, and there's a picture of me on the FBI's most wanted list. And my first reaction was, well, this was photoshopped. This is like a joke.
Right.
A picture of me, somebody handed me a megaphone and I was giving my speech. And that was the picture of me on the FBI's most wanted list. I went off 4 days later and I gave another speech and I watched that speech and I never even mentioned January 6th. And 12 days later, I'm in my apartment working, horrific, loudest banging on the door. FBI, FBI, FBI. I immediately thought, well, it can't possibly be the FBI because this must be a Colombia cartel coming to murder me. This couldn't be the FBI. They would have called me screaming. And I stand up and I turn to kind of come and they break the door down with a battering ram. Battering ram, 20 guys in tactical gear, huge weapons pointed at me, the laser sight beams, as close as I am to you. Turn around, turn around, turn around, like screaming. And I was disoriented and I took a step forward. And I thought later, it definitely could have been justifiable homicide. And I'm looking, I'm like, that's weird. I remember thinking, oh. And I got really calm. And I was fine. I had handcuffs and shackles. There was doors, broken. Perp walk in front of the neighbors. Handcuffs, shackles.
Oh, yeah.
Goes off, we go to jail. So no, it totally backfires on people like me. It's a foolish move if you're trying to silence people like me. The judge is like, you can be released. And then they have shackles off and they literally kick me out on the street, downtown Los Angeles. I have no shoes because they didn't let me take shoes. And I said, how am I going to get home? And the officer says, you should have thought of that. It's done to break you. And the other thing that they did that was very effective, they took all of our computers and phones.
Now, you went to trial for this.
Yes.
Where were you tried?
All J6th defendants were being tried in the District of Columbia. That was intentional. None of us are from the District of Columbia.
Yeah.
And the District of Columbia voted 96% for Biden. And this was a political issue. I think 30% of people, or 20 or 30% of people that live in DC work for the federal government. So not moving was really unfair to J6 defendants. I had every intention of fighting and pleading not guilty until I saw the charges. So the charges included a bizarre 1512C2 felony that's 20-year felony. Theory was that Arthur Andersen, their accounting firm, shredded documents. So to close that loophole, it's called closing the Arthur Andersen loophole. Somebody 20 years ago came up with this 1512C2 statute, which is witness tampering and evidence shredding. That is what they charged me and hundreds of J6thers with. You might ask why? Because it's wholly irrelevant, has nothing to do with us. 20 years, that was why. This is how they got J6thers to take a plea. And I'm a lawyer. What does this 1512 witness tampering and evidence shredding statute have to do with me? I was literally walking through crowds and gave a speech. I understood trespass. I understood parading. Then we could talk about selective prosecution, like why are you prosecuting me and not everybody from the Summer of Love?
Conservatives don't get to protest. That's really the rule.
But this 20-year felony was weird. It had no relation at all to us as 20-year penalty. So this is how they got virtually everybody to roll over. They were very, very eager for J6thers to just take a plea. So the narrative is, oh, we all pled guilty. It was just a terrible thing. So when I discovered it was a 20-year felony, I did take the plea. I couldn't afford a felony as a doctor and a lawyer. I mean, as a practical matter, I would have lost my licenses. And I had an organization to run. I couldn't be put away for years. It was out of the question. And on a personal level, it's pretty scary. So for all of those reasons, I accepted the plea to a misdemeanor trespass. Exactly how many misdemeanors do you find going to prison? No misdemeanors in America go to prison. So I was expecting when I showed up at trial.
Right, and that would be an expected part of the plea too, right? That would have been your presumption.
Does she have a violent past? Has she ever been convicted of anything? You know, is this a gang offense? Is there violence here? You know, does she have a way to employ herself? Of course I didn't think I was going to prison. And instead of sending me to a camp, they sent me to a maximum. My judge was a fellow named the Honorable Christopher Cooper. I didn't recognize the name, except when I showed up in court, that was Casey. Casey was my classmate at Stanford Law School. Class of 147 of us. Of course we knew each other. We kind of lightly dated, but he should have recused himself. Right. The standard for recusal is not just conflict, it's the appearance of impropriety. It's not the actual impropriety. It's the appearance of impropriety that they don't even think they're going to be overruled if you've been to school and dated a defendant. Sentencing, I had to show up in person. So much hatred from him towards me that I will never know if it was personal or just his beliefs on J6th. The infrastructure of fascism is kind of already there in America. No one's checking him. Anyone responsible would have said, you know, get off this case. It's crazy. There's other judges. He didn't. So that exists. They sent me to a maximum.